Have you ever had your eyes water sometime? You're not feeling emotional, you're not crying, yet there's just tears running down. What is that all about? That's what we're going to talk about today. You've probably heard that the eye is like a camera, and that is accurate. The one difference, well, there's lots of differences, but one of the differences between the eye and a camera is that a camera has to have a perfectly clean, totally untouched surface to the lens. There can't be any dust on there, and there certainly can't be any water on there. That's the complete opposite of how the lens on the front of your eye works. That lens is called the cornea, and that corneal dome is this clear window that we look through. It's also a lens because it's got a curve to it. But if there's any area of the cornea that doesn't have water just coating the surface, if it's not perfectly varnished with this nice clear film of tears, then we start to have blurry vision. So our eye has a mechanism built in to help with that. It's called baseline tearing. And baseline tearing is just the tears that you produce all the time. You're not thinking about it, you don't have to, because your body's autonomic nervous system takes care of it. There's a natural secretion of tears all the time. Now, if we drew out an eyeball with the lids and everything, it would look a little bit like that. When we're talking about baseline tearing, what we're talking about is just underneath the lid, there's all these tiny little openings. There are these little glands called the glands of Wolfram, named after a guy named Wolfram, and the glands of Kraus. And those guys discovered all these tiny little openings where you just secrete this constant little flow of tears. You have them in your lower lid as well. They're all along here, down here. And there's millions and millions of these, and so all together they can secrete just this normal amount of tears, and it just always coats the surface of your eye. So if you were to look at an eye from the side, it would look like this. And the cornea is this dome on the top, and the only way that that dome can stay wetted all the time is by having lids that are always blinking that across. Now, to illustrate the point of what happens when we have eyes watering, I'm going to end up making this flat because it makes it easier to draw, but the miracle isn't that sometimes our eyes do water, it's that they're not watering all the time. Because if you think about it, you have this constant production of tears, but what's to keep that from overflowing? Well, there's two things. And those two things are good old evaporation. If you spill a cup of water on the ground, you come back the next day, all the water's gone. It's just evaporation that took it away. And the other one is the nasolacrimal duct. You have these little openings, and there's these little canals. They're the canaliculus here and a canaliculus here, and they just carry tears away and they go down into your nose. That's actually why you get the sniffles if you cry a whole lot, because your canals are overloaded and dumping all those tears into your nose. You're actually sniffling tears. But between those two things, the drainage through this nasolacrimal system and also from evaporation, you have this normal amount of tears on your eye, and it's not too much. But what if it's too little? And that's what happens when we have the second problem, which is watering eyes, and that is because of reflex tearing. So, I said earlier I was going to make this flat. So if we pretend the cornea is this flat surface, what we want to have is this nice little lake of tears all the time. Just for clarification, there's not actually waves there, that's just so it looks more like water. But what happens if we get these dry spots? It looks more like this. There might be a little bit of water here, a little puddle here, but there's a dry spot right here, and then there's another little bit of water here, and then there's a puddle here. And so when we have these dry spots on the front of the eye, our eye can sense that. We don't know it's there, but our eye knows it's there because you have this nervous system. Its full-time job when it comes to your eyes is to make sure there's always got to be enough tears. And so when that happens and you form these little dry spots, you get reflex tearing. And it doesn't come from these tiny little glands, it comes from this big gland up here. And it's called the lacrimal gland because lacrima is tear in Latin. The lacrimosa, like Mozart wrote, that's it's crying, that's tears, the lacrimal gland. And its job, it's big too. I mean, even if you're talking about eye stuff, we always talk about things in real small terms, but the lacrimal gland, it's the size of a grape. It's big. And so it dumps a ton of tears and it floods over what it's supposed to do, big flood over all this stuff. And then all those islands are underwater again and you're okay as far as the surface of your eye is concerned, but there's too many of them. Evaporation and the nasolacrimal system, they're not enough to keep up with that, and so all of a sudden your eyes start running water. It's the reason that if you have ever had a car air vent just blow on your eye for a little while, all it takes is a little bit of time and tears start pouring down your face. It's because you've created these little dry spots. And in an effort to rescue the front of your eye, your lacrimal gland has come in and said, I've got this, and it sends a reflex rush of tears down the front of your eye, and some of them go over your lid and down your face and make you look like you cry. And that's why our eyes water sometimes.